Good morning to those of you here in the sanctuary and the ones viewing us online at home. My name is Susan Owen Kinsey, and I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Flint, a progressive LGBT affirming religious community in which people are encouraged to be themselves. If you would like more information about our faith, traditions, or this congregation in particular, please contact our ministers after the service, or you can go to our website and get their contact information, or if you'd like to talk to some of our members, go down for a coffee hour. We'll be glad to talk to you there. Or if you just want to drink a coffee, you can get that too without being attacked by people. You can also sign up to receive our e-update, which is like a little newsletter telling you what we're about and also what's coming up. You'll find these in the back of your seats. You can also sign up for that on the website, uuflint.org. And there is a, of course, code on the back of here you can scan and get it. We have to have many ways of doing things nowadays. We have a congregational meeting as of Sunday the 8th. It's going to be right after the service, and we always promise that it will be short, and most of the time it's true. And this one we're planning on being short also. And if you'd like to come to this, our members, and please join for the 400-year-old outrageous act of institutional independence. Sorry, no bishops or presbyteries allowed. They're not admitted. And if you'd like to know more about the newly formed North American Unitarian Association, please join Jerry in the sanctuary next Sunday at noon. The congregation will be, if it votes for this, will be then part of two associations. The very new one, but still be part of the UU Association of America, the Unitarian Universalist Association of America. And if you're a regularly attending person at our church, whether a member or not, and your picture is not in our picture directory, we'd like to have a picture of you. If you would come up to the piano after the service, we'll take a picture right then. It's nice to be able to put names and faces together, and some of us are getting a little older and can't remember quite as well. We have a few other announcements. We need a coffee person for the first Sunday of the month. If you're willing to be here a little early and stay just a little late, please talk to one of the ministers or to Ray Rust right there, the moderator. And we probably can get, if we had two, that would be even better. You can share the load. But coffee is kind of like a sacrament, yes. A sacrament for us. It is for me too. Also, one of our members, Thomas Rourke, recently lost his mother. And there's a card at the back if you'd like to sign it on your way out. And also, it'll be downstairs. I think that's all of the announcements we have. We will go to our chalice lighting. Nearly 95 years ago, a small group of people met in Flint, Michigan, and wrote the following. In the love of truth, the Spirit of Jesus, we unite for the worship of God and the service of man. We, the undersigned, desiring to establish a liberal church in Flint, Michigan, do hereby affix our names as witness of our loyalty and support. April 13th, 1930. Marshall Meadow-Deff, Robert McFarland, Frank Warham, Mrs. Frank Elizabeth Warham, John Baker, Nettie Baker, Bertram Dowtry, Alice Smith, Ella Elizabeth Marriott, and Reginald Marriott. If you'd now join with me in reciting our covenant. Recognizing the virtues of diversity, the beauty and wonder of shared worship, and the transforming power of love and service, together as a sacred, intentional community to freely seek knowledge and truth, and by the fullness of life, and by our actions to increase goodness and justice.
Our opening words this morning is a Seneca Thanksgiving prayer. And the great mystery said that when even just two people meet, they should first greet each other by saying, Naya Weskino, which translates to, thank you for being alive in the here and now, and not adding to the confusion of the world. Or more simply, thank you for being Naya Weskino.
We can all stand and sing page 67. The words will be up on the screen. We sing now together our song of thanksgiving, rejoicing in good which the ages have wrought, for life that enfolds us and helps and heals and holds us and leads Thank you so much. Please be seated.
To worship means to consider that which has worth. Today, we consider with gratitude the many gifts of this community.
The opportunity to be affirmed in who we are and to offer that affirmation to others. The chance to stand up together to help remake the world in the ideal of justice.
The freedom to choose one's own path to truth and to learn from the stories of others. The space to expand one's own spirit and to reconnect after busy or humdrum weeks.
Regular reminders that we must see our world through the lens of love. And the aspiration to consider all life as precious. For if all of it is made of stardust, how can it not be precious?
So this morning, let's welcome all of these gifts with gratitude, for they may and have been paid for with many currencies.
The blood of the martyrs who died so that we may be free in our religion. The sweat of those who persisted in justice's name against hostility and adversity.
The tears of those who struggled to build better lives for those in this life. The questions of our children as they understand the world anew and offer their understanding to us as a fresh lens.
The laughter and joy of those giddy with the embrace of community. The infinite small acts of service that make the parts greater than the whole.
So today we consider with gratitude and humility what it means to pay forward what has been paid forward to us.
It is in this spirit that we will now read the names of those who have given to this congregation's endowment fund.
Go ahead, start.
In 1981, Florence Whaley Oro. 1991, Rosemary Vaughn. 1997, Mary Honey.
2004, Chuck Goggins. 2009, William and Barbara Jennings. 2009, Dorothy Nagrich.
In 2014, there was an anonymous donor who provided a matching gift to all endowment donors. Those donors were Raina Bick, David and Glory Body, Curtis and Deborah Dunkel, Dave and Wynn Handworker, John Helsum.
Joan Heron, Paul and Cheryl Jordan, Chris Monk.
Evelyn Newman, Robert Newman, Jim Newtown.
Howard and Tammy Schultz, Scott Stensis, John and Ruth Straw, Charles Thomas.
And 44 additional donors. To celebrate the 40th anniversary of the endowment and the 90th anniversary of the UUCF, a special 4090 campaign was launched. Donors to this campaign were Shauna and Jason Bell, in memory of Jim Gentz and Ron Kruger, Bonnie Pobosic, John and Ruth Straw.
Sandra Murphy in honor of Ron Kruger. Jennifer Howard and Sheila Smith, Dorothy Davis, Karen Anway in memory of Eunice Webster.
Annie Anglim in memory of Ron Kruger and Jim Gentz. Jennifer Myers Thomas, Charles Thomas, Dr. Van and Marion Van Winkle.
John Helsum, Raina Bick, Judy and Danny Tipton.
Harold Ford, Julie Adams, Dave and Kathy Frazee.
Zoe Starkweather in memory of Jen Smith. Evelyn Mackey, Joy Brewer, Donna Loading.
We also want to recognize those individuals who have made legacy promises to the UUCF, and they are Raina Bick, Harold Ford, Kathy and Dave Frazee, Jennifer Howard and Sheila Smith, Jim Newton, Joan Smalley, John and Ruth Straw, Charles Thomas and Jennifer Myers Thomas, Keith Allison Van Camp, Eleanor Lynn McTiernan.
And if you're willing and able, we're going to sing hymn 318. I am dyslexic this morning. We Would Be One. You'll recognize the tune. Thank you so much. Please be seated.
This morning, we welcome new members into our community as members of our congregation. According to our bylaws, a member is someone who is in sympathy with the purposes and programs of this congregation, which includes our commitment to love, justice, reason, and faith. We join together as a religious community through these words. By affirming these words, the members of this congregation also accept the responsibility of trying to live by them and contributing to the life of this community through their time, talent, and energy.
Membership in this congregation is both simple and difficult. It is simple because all that is required is to sign the membership book, participate in the life of the community, and support our efforts.
It is difficult because of what it means. It means that a person has made a decision to join a community that is searching for truth, struggling for justice, and whose members strive to be in loving relationship with one another. These are not easy things. Truth is often unwelcome. Justice can be slow and painful. Love is the ultimate challenge for every human being.
We are thrilled that today we are welcoming 5 people who have chosen to become members of UUCF. Unfortunately, one couldn't be here today, but I would like to ask those people who are going to be members today to please come forward. You're gonna stand. Actually, we have three of the 5 today. Yeah, if you can just kind of stand right here.
Always pay attention to Lynn first and me second.
That's right. Good rule of thumb.
When new members are welcomed, we are reminded to ask ourselves, what is this congregation?
It is not the building, except to the extent that we have chosen it and made it ours and adorned it with the fruits of our time, talent, and treasures. It is not the music, except to the extent that you make it when you blend your voices together to produce sounds lovelier than any one of us could make alone.
This congregation is, of course, the people. Without our members, without our friends, this community is nothing. It does not exist. Buildings may fall, ministers may come and go, and music may go out of tune. No matter. The people are this congregation. Without you, it is nothing. But with you, it can be anything.
You have accepted the responsibility of membership. You have found that you resonate with the ideals of Unitarian Universalism and that you want to commit to the ideals and live them. The responsibility of becoming a member is a lifelong process. We are glad that you have chosen to be with us. Please join with me in the reception of new members, which is the half sheet, and if the current members of the congregation would please rise as you're willing and able. And let us begin. We celebrate your membership as fellow seekers and companions on our spiritual journey. With you, we pledge to listen deeply and to respond with open hearts and minds. We welcome your full participation in our community of faith.
We embrace membership in this congregation as both a gift and a commitment. May our strands of connection grow ever stronger, day by day and year by year, as we join with you in living lives of service. Together we pledge to embody our Unitarian Universalist principles in our everyday lives, blessed by the freedom that encourages us to live with authenticity and integrity, and secure in the knowledge that we are members of a faith community that helps us to live our highest ideals. We commit to act on our belief that we belong together. Thank you. You all may be seated. And as we seal this covenant, we welcome you with a flower symbolizing our hope
that you will fully bloom in your new church home. So if you
There's goodies.
incentive.
Incentive, yes. Did you get that? And a flower from Jerry.
That's okay. We lost her, but that's okay. No, she already sat. She already sat. Yeah. Now go to him. Can you get
Right here. Right top. Oh, here we go. Here's your stuff.
And let's welcome them with some applause. Oh, well, would you like to introduce yourselves? Come on out. Kim, Lisa, and Todd.
Thank you. Right, we missed this one.
I guess this song is for Kim, Lisa, and Todd. Like a long, lonely stream, I come running towards a dream, moving on, like a branch on a tree. I keep reaching to be free, moving on, moving on. 'Cause there's a place in the sun where there's hope for everyone, where my poor restless heart has got to run. 'Cause there's a place in the sun, and before my life is done, gotta find me a place in the sun. Like an old dusty road, I get weary from the load, moving on, moving on. Like this tired, troubled earth, I keep rolling since my birth, moving on, moving on. 'Cause there's a place in the sun where there's hope for everyone, where my poor restless heart has got to run. There's a place in the sun, and before my life is done, gotta find me a place in the sun. 'Cause there's a place in the sun where there's hope for everyone, where my poor restless heart has got to run. 'Cause there's a place in the sun, and before my life is done, gotta find me a place the sun.
Well, congratulations again to the people who became official members today. But you haven't so much joined this community. Instead, the community has been reconstituted with you in it. You can all be proud because being part of a church isn't always easy, and it hasn't been for the 400 years of Unitarian history. In churches today, there are just some universal, eternal concerns, according to author and UU minister G. Peter Fleck. There's incessant talk about finances and budget, recurring conversations about fixing the plumbing, the parking lot, or the dishwasher. There's numerous meetings, Zoom codes, Sunday morning YouTube issues. Who wants all of that? Who needs it? We do. We do. We want it because we need it. Fleck writes, because the imperfection that characterizes everything made by humans is better, infinitely better than no church at all. We cherish the time that we're together, even when it is a bit rough. We're grateful to know that there is a place where we can be imperfect and still be loved. And don't I know it? We know it is a blessing to have a place where we can comfort and be comforted. Today, we recognize the great gift of this community and the people who made it possible. We not only owe a debt of gratitude to the people who established this church that we talked about, but for the hundreds of years of UUs who also felt the need for an alternative to Orthodox religion of their time. And today, I'd like to thank someone in particular who devoted his life to bringing the tragic but inspiring history of Unitarianism to light so that we might honor all who lived and died for this free faith. Earl Morse Wilbur was born in Vermont in 1866 and grew up in an Orthodox congregational church. He planned to be a school teacher, but then he met a Harvard Divinity School student, W.W. Fenn, who ended up becoming a lifelong friend. Fenn would eventually become dean at Harvard, but he shared the good news of Unitarianism with Wilbur that summer and convinced him to join him at Divinity School. In seminary, Wilbur strayed far away from his Christian upbringing, and upon graduation, he was ordained as a Unitarian minister. After serving several parishes and also teaching in a divinity school in Pennsylvania, he was chosen to be dean of the brand new Unitarian Divinity School in Berkeley, California. Wilbur had always had a passion for history, but as he lectured, he found no definitive research on the origins of Unitarianism. He set out to demonstrate that it was not some new philosophy, as some mainstream denominations would have people think, but indeed had a long and proud history. In his first book, published in 1925, he encapsulated the entire history of anti-Trinitarian thought. With few original historical documents to work from, it was an arduous task. Believing that only in understanding and embracing our history could we continue to build a free faith for the future, Wilbur set out then to write a more complete story. Thus, he spent 3 years in Europe between the First and Second World Wars, deep in research of original documents that were written in 13 different languages that he mastered. The timing was serendipitous, as much of that material he used was later destroyed or lost in the war. Wilbur used an ancient typewriter mounted in a wooden frame that could type in English, Polish, French, and German. And there is where he wrote 2 more volumes of history that are currently still required by all UU clergy to read. In his search, he would accumulate the most complete library of Unitarian historical material ever to be collected. His expanded histories were published to great acclaim and are still often quoted. Perhaps most memorably regarding how he characterized the story of our faith. He wrote, "Our faith is one of spiritual freedom, enlightened reason, broad and tolerant sympathy, upright character, and unselfish service." Wilbur came to those conclusions by studying the lives of Unitarian martyrs like Michael Servetus and Francis David, and also the leader of the anti-Trinitarians, Faustus Socinus. By today's standards, their radicalism would be considered quite Christian, but in the 16th century, their departure from Orthodox doctrine would start the evolution of a religion. And modern scholars have said that not only did our forebears' cry of freedom, reason, and tolerance create our faith, but the philosophy influenced the evolution of a free world based on democracy. Throughout the last 400 years, we can be proud that Unitarian thought has been an invaluable force both in the spiritual and secular society of our time. But today, some of us fear the progress we have made will be greatly tested. It is sobering to think that our noble heritage could be at risk. However, Wilbur emphasized that if we held freedom, reason, and tolerance as our sacred vows, we can and will survive, just as Unitarianism always did from the Renaissance to the development of Western society. If we can continue to embody those principles, it is doubtful that a mere 4 years will bring us down. Not that we're not going to have challenges to our liberal beliefs. But Wilbur might ask us to see these as opportunities to live the values that our ancestors fought for. As he discovered the history of what were then called heretics, Wilbur urged us to honor their sacrifices. To this end, he believed that Unitarians must maintain strong characters and hold fast to our values. And they're relevant to us today. But he cautions that if we are true to this heritage, then, and this is important, we will remember that if we have freedom and want tolerance, we have to give it to others. To have better relationships with our adversaries, we cannot apply the principles of freedom of expression and tolerance only to ourselves. This is difficult, but important to remember as we encounter the differences in opinions that are sure to come our way. If we truly wish to uphold reason, we too have to be reasonable. We may not always understand some of the attitudes of others, but dismissing them outright will not ever pave the way for mutual patience and respect. Finally, although it feels as though intolerance is rapidly rising and out of control, we may need to try harder not to be so intolerant of the intolerant. Wilbur wrote in the conclusion of his history that if we want full freedom of belief, we must grant it to others. Throughout the formation of our faith, freedom, reason, and tolerance were used as tools toward acceptance, not as weapons to criticize. Throughout its history, this faith survived based on those basic values. No matter what the obstacle, an unwavering belief in human worth has always saved the day. We should always be concerned about preserving this tradition. But we might also consider our responsibility in maintaining religious freedom as well. Now, that's a lot of weight on our shoulders. But in the next few years, we will no doubt be challenged to think deeply about what it means to be religious and moral and ethical. As we face questions about religion in public education, mass deportation, and violation of human rights, we must decide what it means to be liberal religious citizens. Wilbur believed that a good religion had little to do with beliefs and more to do with the character of its members. Our characters will be tested just as our ancestors were. We have enjoyed the fruits of their labor, and I believe future generations will benefit from ours. We have the freedom right now to accomplish remarkable things and build our own legacy, and you all have the character to do it. Let us not let fear or anger sway us. If we all can learn not only to tolerate, but embrace differences, I think we can create a world that the martyrs only imagined.
When I was a boy, and we went over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house on Thanksgiving, I was very thankful for simple things. Simple things like an olive balanced on a piece of cheese, eating it more or less in one bite, and doing that many times over. Olives were exotic food for me, as we never had them at home. I was not thankful for the living room conversations about the Lions versus the Cleveland Browns, or about President Kennedy and Cuba. But those conversations kept adults well distracted while I made another olive on a piece of cheese hors d'oeuvre. For these things, I am thankful still. And I imagine we all have things like this on our easy Thanksgiving list. Family, friends, food, and a trouble-free furnace. Not necessarily in that order. The practice of being always thankful can get more difficult when the world feels out of control. But frightening times also make us focus on what is really important. Just 19 days ago on Election Day, we became very aware that our ideas, things that we're thankful for, are very perishable. They are things we take for granted until someone tries to destroy them. Those things, those perishable things, are our ideals about how to live in this world. So, we are here today to be thankful for the people who built this church as a home an enduring home for our ideals. During our chalice lighting, Sue read the simple words written and witnessed by 10 people on April 13th of 1930 at the Durant Hotel in Flint. In the love of truth and the Spirit of Jesus, we unite for the worship of God and the service of man. Yes, I know we tell this story about once a year, but your origin story, it should be mythic, memorable, and repeated often. And if it's a good one, it won't be boring. And ours is not boring. Our origin story is best begun with a question. Think of all of the other churches in Flint in 1930. Why didn't those 10 people take it easy on themselves and just go to one of those churches? Starting a church is demanding work. They must have known how much work was ahead of them and for those who would follow them. And what would be the big deal if the existing churches weren't exactly right? So what if the theology seemed a bit off? Any old service got you out of the house on Sunday morning so the neighbors wouldn't think you were a heathen. And all of the churches would have a potluck dinner now and then, probably with olives and cheese on the side. But no, they decided to start their own darn church because they wanted their ideal church. Now, we don't talk much about it, but the simplest, entirely accurate description of our kind, and there are different kinds of people, but the accurate description of our kind is idealist. We measure everything in terms of what could be. Many other people are satisfied with the way things are, so long as their piece of pie is secure. The Reverend John Orrell was not one of the latter. Born in Lancashire, England, in 1822, his parents were too poor to send him to school. So instead, John Orrell spent 6 hours every Sunday in a Methodist church Sunday school. After 6 hours every Sunday, he should have been indoctrinated for life as a good Orthodox Christian. But indoctrination doesn't work on idealists. He worked in the cotton mills of Manchester, England, and came to America in 1840, where he found work in the cotton mills of Pennsylvania. But he was good at speaking before social groups. He was an avid churchgoer, and in 1846, he entered the Unitarian Theological School, Meadville, Lombard, in Pennsylvania. Now, in 1846 or 2024, you don't become a student at Meadville, Lombard if you are satisfied with the common religion of the day. Like the 10 seekers, who in 1930 wanted to start a Unitarian church in Flint, John Orrell wanted a religion and a world that was ideal. The idealists of that day were fighting for things like a nation without slavery, voting rights for women, and a religion that didn't teach people that they were inherently bad, and mostly bound for an eternal hell. Those were high ideals, and John had them, and he had them in a world that resisted change. A lot of powerful people had their slice of the pie and feared for its safety, so they didn't care for idealists like John Orrell. After graduating in 1850, he went to the Midwest to a congregational church in the town of Flint, Michigan. But At that time, they were not interested in his high ideals. He was here for 4 years. Then he went back east and became a full-fledged Unitarian minister in Massachusetts, where there were enough people just like him to fill a church. Then his call to serve people in great need led him south to teach the children of recently freed slaves. His own children, however, had ties to Flint, and after 2 years, John Orell returned to Flint, Michigan. But because of opposition to his religious faith, John Orell never served a church here. He became a business person, a successful one in the lumber industry, and died suddenly in 1876, having never seen a Unitarian church in Flint. It looked like he had spread his high ideas as best he could, did a good job of it in his short life, and then he was done. We do our best to pass on something good, but it's not easy. John Orell's life was proof that ideals need a home where they can grow and express themselves and where people can learn about them. John first came to Flint fresh out of college, looking for a church for people who wanted more tolerance, equality, reason, and compassion in the world. But nearly 30 years later, there was no such thing in Flint. You have to wonder if he felt defeated. Then in 1930, the Unitarians got their start and had many different, very tenuous homes over the years. You saw them in the Prelude slideshow, the YWCA, the old wagon factory, a church that belonged to someone else, a converted house on Clifford Street. Now, all this makes sense. All origin stories have a journey in them, maybe a desert or a mountain for the people to cross. But of course, wandering around Flint for 30 years may be less poetic than the Israelites wandering in the desert for 40 years, but it was no fun. And then in 1955, 80-some years after John Orell died, his dream came true, and he was in no small part the one who ended the long journey of the wandering Unitarians of Flint. His oldest daughter, Florence, was sitting writing her will one day, and she asked her son-in-law a question about his wife, her daughter, Mary. What good thing would Mary want to happen with the family's money? The son-in-law, Guy Blackington, said, "That's easy. Your daughter Mary would want you to endow the church she loved, the Unitarian church over on Clifton Street." He probably said something like, it's in a house. It's not a real church. The Reverend John Orell's love for his faith had been passed on to his children and his grandchildren. His legacy of free thought, generosity, and service to others lived on through them. 3 of his 4 children grew up to be Unitarians. Not such a bad origin story, not at all. So on this Thanksgiving Day, we can practice being simple, being thankful for simple things. There's great wisdom in that. And we can also be thankful for those who have given their treasure to build this home for very complicated, sometimes fragile things, ideals. Ideals like love, freedom, reason, tolerance, and justice. All the way for everyone. Of course, not everyone has those ideals, but in this house, we keep them safe and ready to go.
page 6, just as long as I have breath, if you're willing and able. Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love. Thank you so much. Please be seated.
This was a great service, to tell you. So most Saturday mornings, about 9:30, I participate in a Zoom yoga class given by Sue Kirby, a member of this church. And at the end of the class, close to when we're all peacefully lying on the floor, she says, exhale, bring your knees to your chest. I'm not going to model this for you, just envision it, okay? Knees to your chest, hold them tight, and rock gently on your lower back, which is always wonderful. I encourage you to try that. But then she says, and think about what you are grateful for today. So yesterday, as I was massaging my lower back and rolling, the thought that I had was this congregation and everything it takes to put this service together, all the moving parts, the great words we hear from our minister, the music, the safety crew, the ushers, and the coffee that we're going to be participating in later. All of that is a gift that I'm grateful for. I'm also grateful for the endowment committee that helps to steward the endowment fund. Karen Anway, David Hurt, Kathy Watchhorn, Dave thank you, handwork, and myself. And so I'm grateful for that, but I am so, so grateful for the endowment fund itself. 40 years, over 40 years we've had this, and we've all been contributing to it as we can. So the Buddha tells us that gratitude is a key part of spiritual practice that can help us live with compassion, mindfulness, and an open heart. And when we are grateful, we then feel our abundance, and we have great abundance, each and every one of us. Abundance in a spiritual context is less about material things, but more about an appreciation of life in its fullness, joy, strength of mind, body, and soul. And it is from our abundance that we give freely to those that we care about, including this faith tradition. As you know, there are baskets in the back of the sanctuary to receive your offering. You can go to uuflint.org. If you're interested in learning more about how you can leave a gift a legacy gift to sustain this faith community. You can see anyone on the endowment committee or our ministers. Thank you very much.
Life is a gift we have not earned and for which we cannot pay. The best that we can do is express our gratitude for the undeserved gifts and do our share of the work of creation.
Let us extinguish the chalice. Extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we're together again.
We are living beneath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power, some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. I am alone and I am searching, hungering for answers in my time. I am balanced on the brink of wisdom, patient to receive a sign. I move forward with my senses open, imperfection to be my crime. In humility I will listen, we're all swimming to the other side. We are living beneath the great big dipper. We are washed in the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power, some in pain. We can worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. On this journey through thoughts and feelings, binding intuition, my head, my heart, I am gathering the tools together. I'm preparing to do my part. All of those who have come before me, band together and be my guide. Loving lessons I will follow. We're all swimming to the other side. We're all living beneath the great big dipper. We are washed in the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power, some in pain. We can worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. When we get there, we'll discover all the gifts we've been given to share have been with us since life's beginning. We've noticed that they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing we've arrived. Loving spirits will live together. We're all swimming to the other side. We are all living beneath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.